So thank you for joining us today to this roundtable organized by the Finance Forum of FACCNE, the French-American Chamber of Commerce of New England. I will give a few introductory words about FACCNE and our event, and then pass it on to our speakers and our guest speakers. FACCNE is a private, nonprofit, member-based business organization that is dedicated to furthering transatlantic business between New England and France. FACCNE is a large network that brings together key industry players and businesses across New England, the US, and France. Our membership includes over 400 professional members in New England, 6,000 in the US, and more than 30,000 worldwide. And in the Boston area in particular, it includes a wide range of industries across science, digital health, software, technology, services, finance, and others. Through our business services and professional events, we provide opportunities for members to grow together, network, and develop their activities in the US. Our Finance Forum is dedicated to connecting members and professionals in finance, private equity, investment banks, advisors, bankers, finance executives, business owners. And our members include François Ducroux, Nicole Ferry-Lachia, all on this webinar today, as well as Jean-Noël Pellegrin, Xavier Touret, and Pierre Chabousson, who are going to be moderators on this event today, as well as myself. I will also point out that I am the chair of FACC'Fin, and I'm a senior relationship manager at KeyBank, a large US commercial bank in the US with over 187 billion in assets, and who is a sponsor to this event today. At this roundtable, we're hosting 5 senior executives and CFOs who will have a chance to introduce themselves very briefly, and who will share their thoughts and perspectives on select topics that will be moderated by Pierre Chabousson and Xavier Touret. I would like to finally point out that this event will be recorded and available on FACCNE's website. Please remember to mute your lines as we go through this roundtable. I will invite everyone to ask their questions through the chat function of the Zoom tool, and reserve also these questions for our networking break that will happen approximately in 40 minutes. With this, I will pass it on to our moderators, starting with Xavier Touret.
Thank you very much, Louise, for organizing this roundtable, and Ludivine for the help and support of the French American Chamber of Commerce. So I'm Xavier Touret, market practice advisors at Asset Managers Tech, a trade group that I co-founded. I was before head of internal audit and global deputy internal audit for Natixis Investment Managers. And before that, the CFO of a listed company in Paris, which is a part of the CDC, Caisse de Dépôt Group. Louise, should we introduce ourselves quickly and then I go back to my introduction, or do you want to?
Yes, just so everyone can identify the speakers and participants. Yes, please.
Okay.
So very rapidly, I'm Pierre Chabousson, Chief Operating Officer at IDEMIA. I was CFO before, and as we say, one CFO, always CFO. Very happy to be here and help driving the discussion today.
Pauline, you want to go next?
I can go next. Hi, this is Pauline Haddad. I am currently CFO for a company called InsureMatch. We were recently acquired by the Travelers Group insurance company. Before being acquired by Travelers, we were a subsidiary of Plymouth Rock, a regional insurance company. Happy to be here.
David, you want to go next?
Yeah, I'm David Moline. I'm the CFO of Moderna. I've been with the company for 2 years now and was asked to join by my boss, Stefan Boncel, to help the company to build to become a commercial global enterprise. Previously, I was the CFO at Amgen, a biotech company. Before that, I was CFO of 3M, a multinational global company. Before that, I worked for 20 years in the auto industry with General Motors. So happy to be here.
Thank you, David. Philippe, you want to go next?
With Pierre, once a CFO, always a CFO. I had operation and access at Sanofi Genzyme, and I was CFO of Sanofi in the US, Sanofi in Japan, and CFO of Paris University Hospital. So always a CFO as well. Glad to be here.
Jérôme?
I guess there's a pattern here. I'm Jerome Selva. I'm working at Pega Systems, and I'm the global managing director in charge of the global industry market strategy. And as Pierre and Philippe, I've been a CFO before when I was working at IBM, and I've been in the CFO track and the finance track for about 13 years. But I've been a COO and now in deep of the business for the last several years, 8 years about. Happy to be here and engage with this community.
Thank you. And finally, Yannick.
Yes, thank you, Louise. Thank you to have invited me on this meeting, and thanks FACCNE to have invited us. So Yannick Ouvrard, CFO of Keolis North America. I'm still a CFO and CFO in a lot of locations, subsidiaries for Keolis. Keolis is a transit industry. We operate, for example, the commuter rail of Boston. So happy to be here.
Thank you.
Okay. So thank you. Thank you, everyone. So as I said, I'm just going to say a few words to introduce our discussion today. And as Louise said, we're going to save some time for our breakout networking sessions at the end. So we're going to have focused our roundtable today on a few specific themes, but we actually wanted to have a more holistic approach and think about the key drivers in the evolution of the CFO role in this COVID-19 era. I wish I could say post-COVID-19, but maybe a bit earlier to say that. So how can a CEO be successful without a good CFO at his or her side? And let me briefly remind ourselves of the three major components of the CFO function. First, the controller role, which is backward-looking, oriented, and designed to produce an accurate view of the company, not only key to board members, shareholders, other stakeholders, but also to C-suite members, managers, and employees of the company. Second, managing finance. This is a very operational role for the CFO with a direct input into the P&L. And how the CFO is defining the mix between capital and debt, figuring out the best way to access financial resources for the company, for the group, managing treasury, optimizing financial result of the company is really a big objective here. And finally, the CFO is a key player contributing to the growth of the company. This role includes multiple components from strategic planning, forecasting, identification of areas of growth or internal optimization. So more than ever, CFOs need to explore all opportunities. They need to, or they are expected to connect the dots. And so the F in CFO may, increasingly stand for future rather than finance. And with that in mind, we are organizing our discussion this morning around three themes. The first being the global trends. What are you seeing when you look at your ecosystem right now? And how is this impacting your businesses? This is the second part of what we are going to discuss. And finally, we will discuss and share with you, and hope you share with us your view on the evolution of the CFO role. So enough said at this point. With that, I'd like to turn over to Pierre.
Yeah, thank you, Xavier. So let's start maybe with the first what about your perception regarding the trends? We see a lot of disruptive trends emerging, inflation, now hyperinflation, new uncertainties, supply chain disruption, great attrition, environment concerns and regulations. So I would like to ask you, what are the trends you see in terms of impacting your business or shaping your business? And what are the potential impacts, on your companies first? Maybe let's start with you, Pauline. Could you, share your perception and experience on that?
Yep, thank you, Pierre. So I mean, I'm part of an insurance company, so I'll talk first about the insurance industry as a whole. For the past 2 years, I mean, it's not a secret for anybody, but the market have not behaved normally, right? Nobody predicted the type of changes that happened, the magnitude of the change, and we don't even know really how long it's going to take, right? For the insurance industry is all about risk modeling, risk management. So it's been a bit of mind-boggling for the past couple of years, and it's not over. I'd like to focus on one thing which impacts me directly, is the claims. So the losses that insurance companies have to pay to their either individual or commercial companies insured have been increasing greatly over the past 2 years, both in frequency and severity. Just to name a few causes that most of you are aware of, natural catastrophe, wildfire, storm, floods, etc. I mean, it's like, so it's, we've had a number of catastrophe, even though insurance companies have reserves for these catastrophes, it's been harder and harder to predict and bigger amounts. And especially with the COVID environment, we've had, rising building, car materials, chip shortage that you've all heard about. The fact that people didn't really buy cars in 2020, created an uptick in 2021. So the rising increase in the car prices. Same thing, even though we would have thought that we drove less in 2020. So we would have resulted in slower and lower fatal accidents. In fact, it's the reverse that happened. The car wreck, people drove a lot more recklessly, and so it created a lot more fatalities. And 2021 is on trend to be actually even bigger than 2020 in terms of fatalities on the road, etc. I won't spend too much time on this, but just to say that from a claim loss point of view, it's been a few quarters that have been and will continue to be a bit hard for the insurance industry. The inflation, of course, I mean, everyone says that it's transitory, but we don't know how long it's going to take, right? Is it going to take 6 months? Is it going to take 3 years? Nobody knows. So this is another pressure for our planning, 2022, 2023. We're already starting to look ahead, and it's like, there's a trade-off, right? If we increase our prices too much, we're going to lose market share. If we don't increase our prices the same way other companies do, if we increases our pricing too little, we're going to continue to lose money. Now, that being said, so it's all hard, right? And my role as CFO and the role of all CFOs in the industry is really to be really agile and flexible and be able to change our forecasting on the verge of, of a minute. And it's, Travelers is a big group. We're not used to making changes to our plan once they're confirmed. In fact, for 2021, it is the case. We're actually changing our forecast. So it's been, it's been continuing changes. That being said, the insurance industry is, at least the large companies, are well reserved. We have the ability to increase our prices. So I don't want to be too pessimistic. The insurance industry will be fine. It's in general, Travelers is doing well. It has strong risk management, strong pricing, deep reserves. So even though this is hard to manage short term, long term, we don't see that it will disrupt the industry too much.
Thank you.
Sorry if I was too long, Pierre. I didn't time myself.
No, that's great. I would like to have you, maybe Dave, react. Your company just saved the world, I think. No need to mention that. From a fast emerging company like Moderna, Dave, maybe the perspective is a bit different, no?
Yeah, so I think in terms of context, so I joined 2 years ago at the time when the company didn't have any products yet on the market, and they asked me to join to help them to build a company, which we've done. You know, in terms of the key challenges, I didn't meet any other employee for the first year that I was employed by the company. And we tripled the size of our employee base. So 2/3 of our employees had never met each other. So I think very challenging. In this case, we had to, you know, organize the funding as we didn't have any revenue to underwrite a building of the company, which we did successfully. Now we're in a phase, actually, what we're doing now is looking forward to the time when, in fact, we're past, as we already are in the developed world, past the peak of the pandemic, and then transitioning the company to its next phase of development when we build out the rest of the portfolio. So a very interesting, you know, sort of a lifetime opportunity to make an impact, and very satisfying to do so. But yeah, very challenging.
Pierre, you might be speaking on mute.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Dave, for that. Philippe, maybe would you share your opinion? I know you're coming from as well a biotechnology or pharmaceutical business. Would you share as well the same, you know?
Yeah, it's a personal opinion, and echoing what you said. I think what we've seen in the past few months is that the only certain thing is change. And we are seeing in this industry changes all over the place. I think we have seen at the same time a Cambrian-like explosion of innovation, new modalities, new ways of treating disease, new way of vaccination, and all the rest. We see emerging lots of extremely well-funded organizations that are trying to get into the healthcare space, or are thinking to get into the healthcare space, especially coming from the realm of digital, because we have a convergence between data, information, technology, medicine that is building up. And they come from a world of speed. And I think back to David's point about the speed of what had to be done, they come from a world where speed is very different. Biology is inherently slow in general, which means that pharmaceutical development in general is a long process. And we've seen in the past few years that sometimes it can be dramatically accelerated, and that changes totally the mechanics of the game for all of us. And you add to that all the kind of general society change that we're witnessing at the same time, the focus on climate change, on COVID, on global risk, and our responsibilities as employers to, and as companies acting in this world to be part of what the world needs us to be. In terms of change of transformation, which is, again, something we didn't necessarily do in the past in the same way. So all of this happening at the same time, all these disruptions, those changes, those ways of working that we need to adapt with, I would say, also lots of positive. It was different not to be in the office seeing people, but it was also very interesting to see people where they were and to be part of their life, just like we can see from Jerome, his taste for certain painting in the back, or the taste of others of you for certain artwork coming from all over the world. So you're bringing also a different part of yourself to work when we did that, and that was really enriching. And I think we're going to talk about the great attrition or the change of people and many people switching jobs that we hear a lot in the US right now. But for us, I think in the pharmaceutical industry in general, the whole quest of meaning is a given, right? Because the meaning is clear. We are building drugs to save people's life, and there cannot be a stronger meaning than this one. So this part for us, I think, is a plus, actually.
Yeah. Thank you, Philippe. And I was thinking of you know, like transportation, or Yannick, you know, with COVID-19 having a huge impact on the way, I mean, obviously people go to work. This must have had huge consequences on your business, I guess, Yannick, right?
Yes, it's like Philippe told us, everything is about change, and definitely pandemic has changed the world and changed the way we behave, changed our business model. It has had an impact on very different impact when we look at our portfolio, because we have a portfolio of very different companies. So it has not exactly the same impact. After that, one thing that we know is that we are struggling to know what will happen in the future. We need to forecast. We need to understand what is going on. But for example, if we compare and to be part of a group, but also to be a data-driven industry as well, because we have a lot of data about transit and the mass transit. We don't see the same evolution across the country. For example, in Boston, we are still struggling to recover ridership. We are 45%. If we compare, for example, with France or with other parts of the world, we are at in France, we are between at 85 and 90% pre-COVID, so it has had not the same impact. After that, the business models are quite different. For example, if we compare our Canadian activity, we are a B2C model, so everything is paid by your passenger. So when you don't have the passenger, you have to shut down the activity. And it was the first time ever in our industry that we shut down some activities like that from one day to the other. So it has had a huge impact on our industry. After that, they are positive as well, as mentioned by Philippe. When, for example, we see that in the US, there is a push on climate change and on infrastructure, definitely it will have an amazing impact to our industry, because we are part of we are an enabler of the climate change and transformation. Transit, if you want to reduce the carbon footprint, definitely you need to move to mass transit, because it will enable to do that. We need also to change by ourselves, because the climate change, we are using a lot of carbon footprint vehicles. Now we need also to change to be more electrical, and it's where we need also to change our behaviors, to be more partners, to do more partnership with our clients, to invest in electrical vehicles, hydrogen vehicles. So we are pushing hard on that.
Yeah. Thank you, Yannick. I guess, you know, the forecasting was previously a science, it's now an art, I would say. You know, Jérôme, you know, tell us maybe a little bit more about your business, different business, I guess. You're not a transport operator, you're not a rising, you know, insurance tech or biotech. What would be your perception about this surge of mega trends?
So I think the theme that is crossing all the different speakers before is something that we observe. So we are serving all industries, and the CFOs that we interact with have a different approach on their responsibility. And so Xavier talked about the first responsibility being in the control aspect. I think the backbone of what a CFO is remains still the backbone of their mission. But what we're observing is their engagement is more prone to understanding that change is the cause and not the consequence. So they are no longer reacting to the number, but they are proactive in understanding what is the new way of working. We've talked about working from home or remotely. People have decided to move from state or countries as well with COVID. And so what is your responsibility as a CFO to prepare for that and bring that level of flexibility to retain the talent? So the concept of putting people in the epicenter of the decision, along with the dollar aspect of that responsibility, I think is more and more present. And what I see is, having been in a finance background and now engaging with the CFOs, what we observe is that necessity of being that strategic partner that is forward-looking in preparing the company to always be ready for that constant change is more and more present within COVID responsibilities, or what we've heard here from Yannick, Philippe, and others is that ESG responsibility. Today, in the transformation agenda, what we see is when companies like Société Générale or our company, Pega, or others look at their 2025 roadmap or 2030 roadmap or 2050, ESG is epicenter in their transformation. And that's something that I think is not going to go away.
Yeah, no, thank you very much, Jérôme. Yeah, I agree. ESG is a real big issue right now. As you said, in the US, it's becoming top of the agenda. The SEC is working on that. You know, before and by the end of the year, they are supposed to come out with regulations regarding disclosures, ESG disclosures by companies. And so it may be a lot. So they are, you know, working on that. They did a public search, if you will, asking for comments on all those different themes, and it's a lot. So yeah, climate change is going to be a big impact, even in terms of investments. Because if you think about you know, investment that will have to be destroyed or not used anymore, and new investments have to be done at the same time. So there will be a lot for CFOs to focus on. So,
Xavier, so maybe we should ask our team, you know, based on those trends that we see, you know, in a nutshell, what's the evolution of the CFO roles they see? We believe it's more and more strategic role, but would you guys confirm that this role is becoming more and more strategic? And, you know, how do we reconcile, you know, more regulations, more uncertainties? What kind of profile as well you think should fit with this role? Maybe starting with you, you know, Philippe.
No, I agree with everything that was said about the evolution of the role, and I think the reality is that, to the point that was made by Xavier in the beginning about the importance of the various functions of CFO, clearly for a very long time, as long as the books were closed and were closed on time and were closed correctly, you were fine. And clearly this is not the case anymore. There is many more things to consider than just closing the books. And all those trends have consequences in terms of seeing what's ahead for the organization, and seeing and what needs to be prepared today to be ready for those changes tomorrow. And to your point, that requires, I would say, a different financial engineering as well. I think David made that point about the necessity to raise a lot of money very fast to build something up. And I think to your point about energy and climate change, energy companies will be facing the same thing, because all of this will come with significant investments that we will have to do very fast. So to some extent as well, I think that gives us a different equilibrium between what was traditionally managing a flow to suddenly all those capital points. And I think we also see that the movements of capital are much faster than the movement of the flow. And I think for me in the pandemic, we saw that very clearly, that the stock market was back to pre-pandemic price way before any other things was back to pre-pandemic activity. And the speed of those movements between your capital and markets and all the rest versus the flow of the business has changed, and they are not necessarily always in sync. And I think for a financial function, that makes things extremely difficult to manage, because you get out of a more predictable world to a world which is much less predictable.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you very much, Philippe. And David, how do you see the? I mean, you've been, as you said, in different positions. I mean, CFO positions, you know, in different companies. And how do you see the evolution of the role based on
yeah, thank you for the question. I guess what I would say is we in finance, I always tell my people, we have a seat at this table, the strategic table. And what do we bring? Why do we get a seat at the table? Well, it's because we bring the data, right? Our first threshold responsibility is to bring the financial results on a timely basis, make sure they're accurate, and they represent the facts. So that's point one. That's how we get to the strategic table. Then we also have a forward view of the business, different scenarios of the financial results going forward. And it's important for us to take those and interpret those for members of the leadership who might not be able to understand the numbers so well. So it's our role to describe what the numbers tell us. And usually if you do a good job of analysis, the strategy becomes often quite obvious as to which strategic direction the company should go. And so I always make sure we're focused on accurate and objective, unbiased analysis of different possible outcomes. And then with that in place, we have a voice and we have the opportunity to express our view as to what the right strategy for the company is. So I think we can have a very influential role in a company, and it's really up to us. We bring the data, we bring the facts, and we need to interpret that, and that allows us to participate in the strategic setting of the direction of the company. And that's true in all industries, I find.
Yeah, and do you believe like the CFO could be a driver on his or her own, like bring some ideas or projects at the table that should be discussed at the with the C-suite.
Sure.
I don't know. I'm thinking of process automation or process optimization.
Sure.
And this could be also linked to what the COO is doing. So there might be some.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, 2 points.
Here.
There's 2 points. One is cost and efficiency. How do we run the company in the most competitive fashion, which in the CFO role, you have a unique perspective on those questions and a responsibility to be competitive and drive that. And then secondly, how do you grow? Where do we invest to grow? And again, we can have an important role in encouraging that we direct the resources of the company to where the best return opportunities and growth opportunities are. So that's why I say our role in analyzing, because we have the data and the ability to interpret that, can be quite effective in helping the company to make good choices.
Yeah. No, thank you.
Thank you, David. Pauline, will you agree? New challenges, new trends, and as well new CFO roles in your perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I completely agree with what was said before. And I'm part of the insurtech industry, so same thing. I mean, things are moving quite fast. And I think the role of the CFO, we need to be at every level, at the micro level where we need to make sure that the book closes on time at the end of the day. That's what matters, really. And so we need to pay attention to the detail. We also need to pay attention to our staff, making sure that we don't have turnover and that our staff are happy and that we don't, we're not part of that great transition, sorry, I'm losing the word of the great resignation trend. And at the macro level, definitely, especially in the insurtech or public company world, in my case, we need to make sure that we translate the strategy into profitable growth, right? We need to be able to prove to management, to the board, to the shareholders that at the end of the day, what we do will translate with growth, but not only growth, but also profitable growth. So in that, I completely agree with David. It's like partnering with the CEO and management team just to make sure that, what we do, it makes sense. And it's the last skill that I want to point out is more than before, I think, we need to partner with people across all functions, right? I am working on a daily basis with sales, with IT, with the back office just to make sure that we're on track. So it's be a good listener, really, is the skills that I'd like to point out the most.
You know, I feel like I want to jump on what you're saying, Pauline, here, because what I've observed is the best CFOs are the ones that have applied their growth mindset, understanding that they do not succeed alone, but they succeed together with all the different stakeholders. And there are this force of activating the talent to be ready for tomorrow. And today, how do you apply the right technology to gain that efficiency, whether you are a CFO or somebody aspiring to be a CFO in a company that is in a specific maturity curve of the business? Nobody is in, not everyone in this audience, I believe, is from just a global corporation. Some of them might just be a CFO in a small startup, or some of them might be in a family-owned company, or whatever it is. Whatever is the industry, whatever is the maturity and the dynamic of that company, I think what is very important in that role of the CFO is really applying that intelligent and growth mindset to navigate to the ultimate outcome expected towards growth, whether it's business continuity through revenue protection or cost cutting or investment for growth. I completely agree with what you said.
Thank you, Jerome.
Thank you, Jerome. Yeah, and Yannick, what do you see on your side?
I'm the last one on this question, and it's hard because a lot of things have been expressed. I totally agree with David, Philippe, Pauline, and Jerome view and perspective on yes, it's good to report and it's good to close the accounts, but I would have to say that when you close the account, it's too late, basically, because you already have to understand what is going on and what is the future. So if you try to explain everything in the past, it won't make sense. But we still have a gatekeeper, we still have some fiduciary responsibility. We still have to do our work on the basis, basically be compliant, respect the rules, ensure that internal control is delivered, and that we audit that as well on a regular basis. After that, for me, one of the key things, I said that transit is an enabler, but for me, CFO is an enabler. It's how you make the thing happen, how you provide the resources to the company to sustain the growth, how you improve the efficiency of your company to ensure that you have enough resources, and what is the trend in the industry, and how you compare to the industry, and what are the disruptors that are coming. And we know that things are changing fast. So if you don't have the vision, if you don't have a midterm, long-term vision, if you don't compare, for me, you are not a good CFO. And one thing also, if you compare, you are the only one with the CEO to have a full perspective of what's going on in the company, and you are like that. We are talking a lot about business partnership. I know that it's a little bit bullshit, but it's real. Basically, if you don't make a team with the CEO and to be like a duo to change yourself and to be the one who is pushing more on certain areas and to be the ones to be the innovative, and you for me I would say it's that to be the CFO needs to be that.
Yeah, it's often that the CFO and the CEO are together answering analyst questions, or you sit at the board and yeah, so that is absolutely key. Yeah.
Let's move to our last question before the breakaway. So team, in a nutshell, takeaways for our audience. We saw that it seems that the CFO is now becoming very strategic. He has to lead, educate, inspire, drive performance, deals with forecasts, convince the board and the investors, whoever. So on one sense, more and more strategic, more and more regulations as well. We talk about ESG. Would you say that the CFO has become a unicorn? In French, we say mouton à cinq pattes. The Americans say unicorn. And how do you see the future of staffing? What's the succession plan? Are we able to attract talents for this future role, which is still very strategic, but probably more and more complex? Maybe starting with you, Dave, because you are hiring a lot of people and probably hiring a lot of people.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
As well.
Yeah, I would say it's quite a big challenge, because to find people who both have the detailed analytic orientation plus are in a position to communicate, because we as CFOs, the most important thing we can do is interpret and communicate effectively that people can understand. So having both of those skill sets takes some time to develop, but it can be done. So it's up to us to invest in our people and really develop our staffs. What I see is that in some of the newer industries like biotech, we tend to have challenges because there aren't people who have been in the industry so many years. So like myself, sometimes we're having to find people from other industries and teach them about biotech to be able to make the transition, because you just don't have the history, because the industry, didn't exist before. So, but yeah, I think it's very possible to develop talent. You really need to invest in your talent and recognize that, it's a long journey. But yeah, I think it's a great opportunity and it's a very exciting field.
Yeah, and because the CFO is so close to the CEO, and it could also be seen as a very good way to, as you said, to know the company, to know everything, and maybe it should be on the path to becoming CEO. And I know some large organizations where becoming CFO for a number of years is on the path, right, to then
Sure.
grow up the ladder. Do you see this?
If you ask me, yeah, we see that. It depends. Different industries, I think, have different requirements. But yeah, I think it's a very good path. Frankly, in my case, I always felt that I had all of the things to run the company and got to do all of the things of a CEO and didn't have to do some of the things I didn't like to do. So I always stayed in finance. But yeah, some people go and become CEOs. That's not bad either.
It is cool.
Yeah. And you, Pauline, do you see in the insurance group, do you see because it's financial services, I guess it's
financial services. Yeah, I think it also depends on the personality, right? You need to want to be in the limelight. I'm not the personality. I don't want to be a CEO myself, but I can see that it could be a trajectory, right? Because you're such a strategic partner to the CEO. But I think, like CFOs tend to have personalities that want to focus on the details, focus on the operations, the back office. And I'm a person like this. I don't aspire to become a CEO. So I think it very much depends on personality.
Pauline, we don't believe you.
What?
No, but the thing is,
you don't believe me, okay?
No. But the thing is also, in terms of attracting talents, because yes. I think the younger generation, like the business school students, they don't go to finance. Most of the time they try to do something else or do in private equity or other activities.
That's absolutely right. I wanted to react to something that David was saying earlier. It's funny because I have a personal experience. A couple of weeks ago, I injured my hand. And so for like a week or two, I was not able to touch a spreadsheet, right? And it's a stupid story, but I felt like I did a better job with my staff because I couldn't touch a spreadsheet, and I had to delegate and I had to listen, and I spent more time with the team and just, coaching and mentoring and asking people to do things than actually rather than doing it myself. And it was just a quick reminder for me to say, my job is more important than managing staff and encouraging people and just making sure that I understand what's happening outside of my little world than doing things myself. I thought it was a funny experience to share.
I think
I'm going to use that excuse, Pauline.
There is just one thing I would like to share is, one thing that everyone should appreciate is the trajectory of a CFO is no longer just one career-long journey. The new generations are going to have 5 or more careers completely different, and they will have probably roles that do not exist today. So I think that growth mindset is super important. And as CFOs, when we attract talent, we're really attracting the talent not for today to just meet one job, but the talent that have the capacity to grow and accompany the company as they continue to evolve. Louis, you want to move us?
I would like to echo what Jerome is saying, because at the end of the day, you know, the most important thing is a growth mindset. And if a function is organized to provide growth and development, well, then you will attract people because they understand that it's going to make them grow and it's going to make them better individuals and companies. I think it's not about the ultimate career goal. It's just, well, is it a place where I can learn something and grow? Is it a place where I can be useful and grow? Is it a place where I can bring something else that none other can bring? And in finance, there are plenty of roles like that. So this is the way we explain and we share the ambition for such a critical function.
I want to thank all the guest speakers and moderators for this roundtable today. Thank you for your thoughts and insights. This was a fantastic event. I also would like to mention that FACCNE has some great events ahead and would invite everyone to consider, of course, membership as an individual or as a company. In particular, we will have a Beaujolais Nouveau in-person celebration on November 18 at 6:30 at a French restaurant called La Voile in Brookline. And tickets are already on sale on the website. With that, I would like to thank everyone and close the webinar.